Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to today's episode of the Players NIL Industry Insider Podcast. Today, I have a true insider. Many people believe one of the most influential people in the college NIL era and an influencer of many at many levels in sports marketing. Chase Garrett, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Mark. Excited to be here. Chop it up about some cool stuff with NIL and athletes and all the stuff that's changing on a daily basis.
Yeah, it was great. Well, Chase, you're the founder and CEO of a company called Icon Source. We'll get into Icon Source, but I try to make this a little bit personal. And so my first question is, our first principle of our business is how to use athletics to better your life. So I'm going to flip that around and ask you that question. How did you use athletics, particularly when you were young, to inspire you, to create opportunities, people you meet? What's your athletic as inspiration story?
Yeah. Been involved in sports my whole life. Sports teach you a lot of discipline. They teach you, how to lose and how to come back, how to do things that are hard. For me personally, I raced motocross all as a young person, grew up fairly involved in that at a pretty high level and got to network with a lot of good folks. Had a pretty poor professional career, but was deeply integrated into the space. And so it opened up opportunities for me to leverage what I had built from a career in sports and my education going to University of Central Florida as well to build a career in sports. And so I think anytime you're able to compound, extensive sports background along with some sort of an education, you're in a pretty intriguing space to build something. So I've been doing sponsored deals since I was probably 12 years old for myself. And then, after that career kind of dwindled and I graduated from school, I started a sports agency. Kind of went to my buddies that were more successful than I was on the track and said, "Hey, I'll help you do your contracts." And so just kind of built that, worked with a lot of different athletes in snowboarding, surfing, moto, and then just kind of parlayed that into a career with Red Bull. So I was very connected into that space and was really fortunate to join Red Bull and be on their athlete marketing program. So at Red Bull, I was responsible for, finding the next talent in all different types of sports, building those relationships with those individuals directly, and then building programming around them. What are those athletes going to do? What are exciting projects? How can Red Bull really show up for them in those moments? And that was a really cool experience to work with athletes, from NFL, Olympics, baseball, football, action sports, Formula One. And so, after doing that for a while, I really felt there was an opportunity to disrupt how brands engage with athletes and how they can find them to leverage them in all types of ways, similar to how influencers had built those channels. And so that's why I started Icon Source. So,
Great.
yeah,
Well, it's a. I'm sure it wasn't a straight line. I'm sure there was a lot of detours and changes. But
absolutely.
one question that comes to mind is back to motocross. How many broken bones?
Man, far too many. The human body is resilient, though. I'm happy to say I'm 39 years old and wake up and still get after it every day with no pains in my body. But I think I'd broken just over 30 by the time I'd wrapped it up. So, broke my arm 10 times, legs. Nothing too critical, no backs or femurs or necks, but a lot of annoying, collarbones and arms and whatever. So.
I'm sure your parents, your family, and your loved ones were glad when you hung up the motorcycle.
Yeah. And now that I have two daughters myself, I can't even imagine how my parents went through that, but grateful that
Great.
they allowed me to pursue my dreams. So,
So you work for Red Bull, and many people think Red Bull is a drink company. I don't think they realize that it's a media company and a sports and entertainment company
yeah.
primarily. But my question to you is, in thinking about Icon and building in your mind, I'm sure the business plan for Icon Source. Uh, how did you identify the gaps in the traditional sports marketing system? What did you see, and how did you plan to fix it?
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest problem was just the lack of throughput. There's this sense that there's not many athletes and that they're very high priced to work with. So it just wipes away a lot of opportunity for a lot of athletes. And realistically, most every athlete that's made it to a professional level is a hero in their local, community or hometown, or they're tied to a specific cause, or they have a lot of things that are very authentic to them as a person. And there's brands out there looking for those. And I just felt that there was such a challenge to create that connection. Traditional sports agents are great advocates for their top prospects, but that's a very small group, and they just don't have time to really look for opportunities for their entire roster, or much less look for opportunities even for their top athletes in areas that may be non-traditional or outside of their Rolodex. And so we really felt that not only do athletes deserve more opportunities, but there's a lot of brands out there that deserve a seat at the table to be able to engage these individuals and build really compelling partnerships. And then that way, athletes who are so dedicated to their craft can find ways to monetize their value in more meaningful ways in a longer term. So that was really the passion behind it. We felt that there was a big gap. And Icon Source started before the college NIL space had really opened up. So I was really advocating for this in the professional athlete space, where I still believe there's a huge opportunity. And then, we saw the future was looking like college athletes were going to have an opportunity to partner with brands down the road, but there was nothing really specific when we started in 2018. And so, when the college opportunity opened up, it really just provided scale to the problems that we were trying to solve, which was a really exciting time for us.
Great. I love that you identified the problem, and you thought about a solution. So how does Icon solve that problem?
Yeah. So, initially we just said, let's create a central point of entry, a singular spot for brands and athletes to come together. The athletes can kind of show what's unique to them, what sport do they do, they're following, the basics that define them as kind of a media asset. And then brands can come into our platform, build a campaign, and add athletes to that. And so, we've added different complexities as the company has grown, where brands can look at demographics around an athlete, around an entire campaign. We provide contracting through building out these campaigns, signing, payments, automation. And so now it's a pretty comprehensive solution for a small group can build a really sophisticated athlete marketing program in a matter of minutes. And so that's what's been really exciting. And no longer do you have to do the $1 million investment in one athlete where you're highly leveraged on that individual saying the right things, performing well, and not messing up. But now you can do a very diverse campaign. You can work with hundreds or even thousands of athletes at all different scales, and build a really dynamic campaign that can be, brand awareness at a high level to help, users see what your product is, build trust, but then also build it on a personal level where consumers can be interacting with these athletes in different communities. So I really think that providing brands with more ways to engage with athletes, from product discounts, free product, to paid partnerships, can bring tremendous value to both sides of the market, from athletes getting some value to brands really seeing the benefit and the return on their investment. So
Great. So I'm just going to put the timeline together. So you're an athlete, you retire, you work with athletes in marketing, brand deals, you work for one of the biggest media companies in the world in terms of promoting and working with athletes and brands. You see a gap in the system, you see something that's missing, you fill it with a technology solution. We would call it today a two-way marketplace, I think is what most people would refer to it. Since July 1st, 2021, most people understand that college athletes have been allowed to monetize their name, image, and likeness for the first time in the history of the NCAA. But since July 1st, lots of things have changed and happened. We don't need to go through it all, but because our audience wants to know what their place in this ecosystem is, my question to you is, what are the most common misconceptions that athletes have? We heard what you think. We heard what brands think. What are the athletes saying to you? What is the feedback you're getting? What is their misconception of this opportunity that you say we have?
Yeah, I think And this is something I experienced even at Red Bull when I'd be signing athletes. I worked with a lot of young snowboarders. I signed, Red Gerard, who's Olympic gold medalist when he was 13 years old, and got to sit down with athletes to help them understand what is their role when they have a brand sponsor or an endorsement. Like why are they even being paid or compensated? And it's because that they can bring value to that brand through trust in their product, which will hopefully result in a return on that investment to where they're really going to just drive sales. And an athlete needs to understand that at any level of working with a brand. And so I think people, athletes, media got their heads so wrapped around what is an athlete getting paid? What are they worth? How much money is going around? And everybody is forgetting the real reason that there is opportunity in this space. And that's because brands can bring value, or athletes can bring value to brands and products to be sold. And I believe that gets glossed over way too much. It's not focused on. Athletes don't even understand. They think they're getting paid because they're good at their sport. Being good at their sport has given them an audience, it's given them credibility, but that's not why you get paid, because there's no just grant that will go out and pay an athlete because they're good at their sport, unless a professional team is paying you, your team contract. So I believe there just is a lack of understanding of why an athlete is, can demand compensation like that. And I think we've seen some athletes do it well. We've seen Livy Dunn and the Cavender twins who have found a way to really build their brand. Some people may not agree with the way they've built their brand, but at the end of the day, they've created tremendous engagement from a lot of individuals. And so they're not necessarily the most sought after athletic, person in their field, but they've created a brand that is driving consumer engagement that's resulting in sales for their brand partners. And so I think athletes need to understand that that's really important. And it's not just about now I can get paid. You're not getting paid because you're good at your sport. You're not getting paid, because you're a college athlete or you're a pro athlete. You're getting paid because you're driving growth for the brands that are getting behind you. And I think that's also something that athletes undervalue from a respect standpoint. I think when a brand approaches an individual to be a part of a campaign, that is like a huge honor that I think quickly turns into how much are you going to pay me? And it should result into getting to know that brand. Wow. I'm so grateful that you're considering me. What about myself are you most interested in? Is this a really authentic partnership that could open up and look at longevity? Because I just think that it's such a cool opportunity for athletes to get inside of these brands and understand a little bit more.
So along those lines, I had an opportunity to work with 100 high school athletes in the inner city in Baltimore last summer, 5-week program, teaching them leadership. And one of the sections was just what you're talking about. We went through the relationship with a local business, and we used a pizza shop as an example. And I asked them, if a pizza shop sells a pizza for $10, how much money do they make? And of course, they all say $10, right? Because that's the answer. But at that age, I'm talking 15 to 17, 18-year-olds, they don't understand the cost of dough, the cost of sauce, the employee cost, the rent, the insurance, all those things that go into a business. So we had that conversation about, do you understand what the pizza shop owner is going through? What keeps he or she awake at night? It's profitability and making money. And can you contribute to that or not? That's the only thing that they care about,
Yep.
And so I love the answer, and it's great. And the second part of it is, I had Eddie Capobianco, who runs social for the NFL, particularly in the youth sports movement or the youth audience. And he said the biggest mistake that some athletes make is they make every relationship or every potential deal transactional. They think it's all about money. They don't understand that one can lead to the other. Do you think that sometimes athletes want to go to the top too quick? They need to build that experience level. Does that play into this at all?
Yeah, I think, I know some athletes personally that I've worked with that have really focused and just had a real interest in getting to know the people and the organization that's behind them. They're fascinated by it. And that has added it's added many years to their relationship with those companies. A good friend of mine, Louis Vito, he was a professional snowboarder, still is, half pipe Olympian. He was on Dance with the Stars. He worked with Red Bull for a long time, and we developed a close relationship. But he knew everybody at the company. He also works with G-Shock. He still to this day works with G-Shock because he knows the executive team. And I just think that that is so important to not only get an incredible education in the world of sports marketing, which is where a lot of athletes could find opportunity post-career, but also just to lengthen those opportunities and even over deliver. You get to understand what's important to this company. Who are the people behind it? They're probably interesting folks because they have an interesting career. And so I think just I don't know, taking a step back as an athlete to look at the bigger picture and understanding the partners that are considering you, getting to know what's important to them and educating yourself. And, you kind of got to put your ego in check because as a 19-year-old or a 20-year-old, it seems like you're the biggest thing ever. But there's a lot of stuff moving around you that's opening up opportunities. And it's a great time to kind of take a step back and look at it and try to understand what's happening.
Well, that fits into my mindset because we're focused on the 98% of athletes that aren't getting pay for play deals from collectives at the college level, and using NIL as the excuse for that. We're focused on real life skills. So if we think about the 98%, which I think you're actually speaking to, a lot of these young athletes, male and female, they may not be multimillionaires from their brand marketing relationships, but there's other soft skills that come with it. What do you think the long-term result or the long-term success will look like for these athletes that take a chance, put themselves out there, and maybe have a brand deal or two while they're in college, even if it's not a monetary success?
Yeah. I mean, I think they're just getting fast tracked on an education that's so exciting. They're networking, they're opening doors for them in the future, and they're getting to do it in a cool way. Whether they're paying you a little bit of money, they're giving you free product. Any of those engagements are meaningful from the brand, and you can't really take it lightly. The chance that some of these brands are taking on you, and I think it's just an incredible opportunity. So sometimes it can be a glorified internship. Sometimes it can be a really meaningful, endorsement deal that can be, great from a monetary standpoint. But either way, I think it's stuff to be considered very serious. It sets you apart from the rest of your graduating class if you're a student athlete. And anytime you can create, distinction from you and everybody else in your sphere is really, really important because you got to go out and enter the job market. You got to go into just real world and you got to find how can I create something that's different for me than everybody else that's competitive. And so I think that NIL has really opened up that opportunity for student athletes.
I agree. I agree completely. So you're an athlete. You're competitive, obviously, when you were young. No athlete likes to lose. Um, then you become competitive at work. You launch your own company. You're an entrepreneur. We talk about leadership. Most entrepreneurs struggle with building teams because they're so focused and so driven. That's been my experience. And they don't play well with others because no one else can keep up with them. And or no one else sees it the way that they see it, right? And so as a leader, you have to obviously include others. You didn't build this company by yourself. Give me a leadership lesson that you learned when you launched your own company and all of a sudden you had to share the sandbox with others.
Yeah, I think one thing is just guaranteed is you're going to make mistakes. And that's challenging because you don't want to see yourself as somebody that's failing from time to time, but it's absolutely going to happen. You're entering in an entirely new space. And you got to be able to own that, understand it, and make quick corrections. I think the longer that you try to be stubborn and keep on your path, the bigger challenge you're going to have to overcome it in the end. And so being okay with making mistakes, learning quick, um, understanding that if you're a founder, um, most likely nobody's going to have the same conviction as you. And that's okay because you've got a lot of skin in the game. If you find people that do have a lot of conviction, protect them, keep them close, take care of them because you can't really buy that. That's just in someone's DNA. And just outwork everybody, your competition, and be grateful for the work that the team around you does. I think it's important to realize you can only go so far by yourself. And whether you're an athlete in an individual sport or a team sport, it's critical to have a group of people together and marching in the same direction. So yeah.
Great lesson, because we work with so many kids, and you see it also. They have this entrepreneurial spirit, and they're type A's. That's how they got to be, the best in their high school program. They got to go to college. They succeeded in college. Maybe they're going to professional sports. Um, in doing my research, I came upon a phrase that I love. And before we get to the last question, second to last question, what does major on majors mean?
Say that one more time.
Major on majors. I saw you
Yeah. So,
talk about
so
that.
yeah. So really focusing on the big picture. Like, don't get obsessed with the small things. Don't get obsessed with the little mistakes. Focus on what you're really good at and focus on the big problems. And I really feel like at an early stage, that's the biggest thing to put your energy into. And don't get too beat up by the little things. And then you'll be successful and really find ways to spend the majority of your time on what you're good at, on what your skill set naturally lends to, and don't get bogged down by the things that you're not good at. You can find folks to supplement those gaps, and that's when you can really be successful. So
Great. Last question I have. What's your legacy? What do you hope your legacy will be in this space?
I want to build something that is important that has really helped transition the world of athletics and athletes. But more importantly, I want to do it in a way that's got a lot of integrity. People that you compete with in the space can all come away with something that defines you. I hope that people think Icon Source operates with integrity. They've treated athletes well. They've treated brands well. Anybody that interacts with us can be proud. Whether it was a successful campaign or not, the people they dealt with, were a pleasure and were trustworthy. So
It's a great goal. I think it's realistic. I think you're well on your way. The industry buzz about your company is always positive, and you are a true insider. And we appreciate you being on the podcast today, Chase. We wish you nothing but luck, and to you and your family, happy holidays, and to Icon Source, to a great 2025. Thank you for being on the podcast.
thank you, Mark. Appreciate all you're doing in the space, and yeah, excited to see where it's going.